Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamu alaikum and welcome to this special transmission on PTV World, where we have been covering the visit of our Prime Minister Imran Khan to Russia. It was a very important visit, a historic visit in the context that a Prime Minister was visiting Russia after a period of 23 years. And now that he's back, we'd like to have a look at what transpired during the whole visit of our Prime Minister, whether it be meeting Vladimir Putin, whether it be meeting the Deputy Prime Minister of Russia, whether it be meeting the Minister for Energy, whether it be also meeting with the business delegations of Russia and Pakistan. A lot happened during the visit of our Premier to Russia. Also, important bilateral discussions happened as far as areas of mutual cooperation are concerned, and the issue of Ukraine also came up during the discussion between Vladimir Putin and Imran Khans. Now, we've been joined by three important guests who are going to talk to us about this visit, how important it was, and what will be the outcome of this visit. Online, we've been joined by Dr. Nazir Hussain Saab. He's an international affairs expert. Thank you very much, Dr. Saab, to have joined us, and welcome to our transmission.
Thank you very much, Umar.
The pleasure is all ours, sir. In the studios, we've been joined by two important guests. Let me introduce them to you one by one. And Naila Chauhan Sahiba, she's a former ambassador. Naila Chauhan Sahiba, thank you very much to have joined us. And of course, our second guest is AVM retired Ikram Bhatti Saab. He is a defense analyst as well. Both of you guests, thank you very much to have joined us and to have come all the way to the PTV World Studios. Let's begin with Dr. Nazir Hussain Saab. Dr. Saab, now that our Prime Minister is back to Pakistan and he has, of course, had quite an important day of deliberations, of discussions, of meetings, looking back at this visit, what are the major outcomes in your point of view?
Thank you, Umar. I think it's a very welcome visit, and after, as you told the audience, it is after decades that the Prime Minister or any head of the state or government has visited Russia, although the desire was always there. Please remember now the Cold War dynamics have changed. It's a new world order, and where Russia is coming closer to other countries which were estranged previously, and the other superpower is going somewhere straight. Pakistan has a long relationship with China, and of course the two great powers, that is Russia and China, are also coming closer to each other. So I think it was a very well articulated and planned visit which the Prime Minister took to Russia, which will open up new avenues of cooperation in strategic understanding, in economic, in political, and in diplomatic ways. Of course, anybody who is well versed with the Russian affairs, they are one of the largest gas producers in the world. And of course, Pakistan has a deficit in energy resources. So there are a lot of talks about the energy supplies from Russia into Central Asia and into Afghanistan and Pakistan. And of course, second aspect, which is being highlighted by some of the elements in Pakistan and abroad, that unfortunately during the Prime Minister's visit, the unfortunate incident of Ukraine took place. Of course, we are cognizant of the fact that this is a very serious affair, and it should be resolved through diplomatic means. And the Prime Minister also has given his statement during the visit. But it was already planned. And of course, when the two heads of states meet, there are a lot of discussions and a lot of background diplomacy being played.
We are talking about Prime Minister Imran Khan's two-day important visit to Russia. He was accompanied by certain cabinet members and other officials as well. A lot of important meetings were held during the course of this visit, whether it be with Vladimir Putin, the 3.5-hour-long meeting, whether it be with the Minister for Energy, the Russian Deputy Prime Minister, whether it be with the business delegations from Russia and Pakistan, or whether it be with the Grand Mufti of the Grand Cathedral Mosque that is located in Moscow. Our Prime Minister had quite a busy day and a busy schedule. He comes back, and of course there's a lot to discuss as to what transpired as far as Moscow is concerned, as far as the details of that cooperative meeting and arrangements that were held in Moscow. To talk about that and more, we've been joined by two important guests in the studio. The first is AVM Ikram Bhatti Saab, who's a defense analyst, and our second guest is Farrukh Pitafi, who's a senior analyst and my colleague as well. Thank you to the both of you to have come to this transmission. Let's begin with you, AVM Ikramullah Bhatti Saab. We were both hearing the media talk of Shah Mahmood Qureshi Sahab, who's our foreign minister, and there were some very important points that transpired. He gave a brief resume of who the Prime Minister met and what actually transpired during the course of those meetings and what is Pakistan's point of view. Have things been made clear as far as those detractors who were raising a lot of questions as far as this visit is concerned?
Certainly, as we learned that before the visit was to take place, there was wide-ranging consultations within Pakistan, because the situation in the region where Russia lies was becoming more tense, and Pakistan had to decide to go ahead with the visit. And I think after several consultations, as he mentioned, that institutional thinking and institutional memory does come in handy, and they eventually decided to go ahead with the visit. And I think it sent out a very clear message that Pakistan would not want to become part of any bloc, and it would continue to pursue its own national interest. And they went ahead with the visit, and I think this visit, while we will yet to learn any tangible outcome of the visit in the shape of some agreements or MOUs will come out later, but the fact is that this visit has paved the way for enhanced cooperation and understanding between the two countries. And I'm sure Pakistan is going to benefit a lot in the days and in the months to come in the shape of developments within the region and between the two countries, vis-a-vis Afghanistan, vis-a-vis India, vis-a-vis energy requirement in Pakistan, maybe transfer of technology, and of course a position in the world, be it strategic, be it diplomatic, be it political. I think this there is a lot to take home from this visit for Pakistan.
All right. Coming to our second guest, and of course a senior analyst and my colleague Farrukh Pitafi. Farrukh, Shah Mahmood Qureshi Sahab has time and again said and talked about Pakistan not being part of any camp politics. Now this has been reiterated by Shah Mahmood Qureshi Sahab while addressing the media a few minutes back, and this has also been the official stance as far as Pakistan is concerned. Our Prime Minister has time and again talked about Pakistan not wanting to be part of any bloc. Right. How clear have things been made now after the visit of Prime Minister to Russia?
Right, Omar, thank you very much for this opportunity to speak on this very important event, this visit. Remember that this was the ultimate diplomatic test of faith. Whenever there is a crisis, usually countries actually postpone such visits, but Pakistan carried it out. The Prime Minister and a high-level delegation went to Moscow, and we just proved that we are very serious in this relationship. This actually is about individual relations, not about any kind of global world order or perception, right? It is important to remember that the world at this moment seems to be in a state of flux. And because of that state of flux, one doesn't know which way the wind will blow, how the world order will emerge. The previous world order, thanks to Donald Trump, is gone. The new world order hasn't emerged yet. So in that fog of change or flux, it is important to remember that you have to connect with all the major powers and all the countries of interest that affect your lives. Afghanistan actually, or the situation that developed in Afghanistan, brought Pakistan and Russia closer. And now Pakistan has proven this, that it wants to and it does attach utmost value to each relationship, right? This relationship is not at the cost of anyone else. This is not against anyone else, as has been reiterated by the Russian side, and so is by the Pakistani side. But having done that, we know because of the Central Asia, because of the Central Asian legacy and civilization. Bear in mind, it is considered Pakistan's, cradle of civilization, right? Because of that, we can connect between the two countries and establish a good relationship with the entirety of the Eurasian bloc, but without being part, as you put it, of becoming any bloc.
All right, that's very important. But also one thing that is again extremely important is the current situation in Ukraine, of which Prime Minister did talk to Vladimir Putin during their hours-long discussion. And the Prime Minister, as per Shah Mahmood Qureshi Saab's media talk, gave Pakistan's perspective on Ukraine. He also gave the aspersion that Pakistan wanted this situation to be handled diplomatically. Also, that Pakistan's desires for restraint cannot reject options of diplomacy even now in the current context. How do you see Pakistan's point of view on this crisis, and how do you feel this is going to emanate as far as regional and global politics are concerned? How has the West taken it in your point of view? Because if you remember well, there was a spokesperson from the US who was asked this question about Pakistan, and there was a very neutral answer to that as well.
Well, I think Pakistan gave a very wise comment, and that too right while the visit of the Prime Minister was taking place. He was in Moscow, and as you mentioned, the question was put up to the US representative about the Pakistan Prime Minister's visit to Moscow. I think when Prime Minister of Pakistan said that no problem bilaterally should be handled through military means, and diplomacy should be given a chance, and even now if the two countries resort to diplomatic channels, this problem can be settled. And he was of course also concerned about the fate of Ukraine in terms of being a developing country, and that in such a situation it is always a developing country which suffers more, and hence the need for a diplomatic solution to the whole problem. I think this would be well received within the West, because they were very keen to know as to how Pakistan reacts or comments on the situation developing between Russia and Ukraine. And this was a very logical and a very wise answer by the Prime Minister, and more so when it is given right in Moscow. And I think it would be well received in the West, and it makes the position of Pakistan very clear that we believe in use of diplomatic channels, and as against use of force in resolving any such mutual issues or conflicts.
That is interesting. Another interesting thing that happened was the way the international media, Farrukh, took hold of Pakistan's visit to Russia, and of course made their own assumptions that A, that visit was not going to happen, B, that once the delegation reached Russia that they are returning. Especially this emanated from the Indian side, and this was also highlighted by Shah Mahmood Qureshi Saab when he talked to the media. Also there were question marks as per Shah Mahmood Qureshi Saab on not proper preparation of this visit under the current circumstances, to which Shah Mahmood Qureshi Saab had said that the Foreign Ministers Advisory Council has been formed in Pakistan, and there was a meeting, and there were meetings with other interests as well, and there was a huge meeting with former foreign secretaries and former ambassadors before this delegation left for Russia. So proper preparation was definitely made. Why, in your point of view, are certain circles downplaying this visit of Pakistan to Russia?
Right. I'm intrigued by two things, right? At the start you called it international media, and then exactly at that time I was about to ask you, are you referring to the Indian media? Because I don't consider Indian media international media, or media for that matter. They are fake news, and they are fake news so much so that they keep on actually reporting untruths, right? Falsehoods. And it is a, agreed upon, fact of life now, because of Narendra Modi and Bhajapa's government and the propaganda mechanism they have. But allow me to actually, before I answer this question, let me also take up the question that you put to Ukraine. Ukraine. I think it is very important to state one's principles, because especially when it was about the State Department's briefing that was going on, and this question was asked, the spokesman actually very clearly stated that it is incumbent upon all responsible countries to condemn, right, the use of force or changing of, geography per force. And that is important because Pakistan is sitting next to a country that is a bully, we all know, India. And India has been trying to renegotiate 1947, right? They keep on talking about Akhand Bharat. So what we did, and it was very clever, a day before the visit, our ambassador in Ukraine actually stated on record that Pakistan does not support the idea of changing geography or borders through use of force. It is very important. Pakistan actually did that already, that was asked of it. Now, regarding India, Indian so-called media or fake media, I think they are clueless at this moment. Why? Because they don't understand how to deal with this visit. On one side, Indian government kept on saying that they are isolating Pakistan, right? And then what happens? The Prime Minister of Pakistan is in Moscow, and traditionally Moscow is their very close friend. The pressure on them at this moment is if they actually try to bait Pakistan or Russia for that matter using this visit, in the end it annoys Russia. The way their baiting of China actually annoyed China, and eventually that relationship has soured. Similarly, if they try to actually bait Pakistan or Russia, in the end their own audiences will ask Narendra Modi, why is it that Pakistan is not isolated? So they have no clue. They couldn't report it properly, they couldn't undermine it, they could not actually deconstruct it or do whatever they wanted to do with it. They are in a very different kind of reality. They have created their own reality. For example, their Milan exercises that are taking place, it includes Russia and America, right? And then they started calling it Quad exercise, which is untrue. And we don't know whether that will actually materialize or not the way it was supposed to, because Russia and America at this moment seem to be at loggerheads. But because of all this state of mind, I can only request our lawmakers, our policy makers and media men like you not to give too much attention to the Indian media. The poor things are beyond redemption at this moment.
But the truths need to be laid out. Now, the original question, of course, thank you for answering that with utmost detail. We were, before the program started, Bhatti Saab, talking about Naya Pakistan, that is the aspiration of our current government. But we also took that to Naya Russia or New Russia. Now, is Russia changing its foreign policy, or is it developing new relationships or strengthening new relationships on I mean, looking at the current situation, the geopolitical or geostrategic location of the region? And do you feel that is going to give rise to a new set of cooperative measures between countries such as Russia and Pakistan?
Certainly. You see, after the demise of the Soviet Union, we've seen that Russia has been gradually coming out of that shock and reclaiming its position that it held soon after the Second World War. And we have seen the way they have gone into Syria. We have seen the way they have put their conditionalities before the US in the case of Ukraine, and the sensitivities that they have shared with the European Union and NATO countries about NATO coming on the borders of Russia. So I think, and at the same time, when we see that Russia has now been for the last 10 years cozying up with Pakistan, and they saw the opportunity that relationship between Pakistan and USA is now regressing, and we feel that they took that opportunity, and they even signed a defense equipment transfer agreement, and from 1914 onward to 2014 onward, we find that we have been receiving the Russian military hardware. We have been doing joint exercises.
The Druzhba exercises.
Yes. So I think the Russians have left that behind the end of USSR, and now Russia itself is taking on its position in the world, and once again reclaiming its position opposite USA, and they are assisted closely by China, and we find that even in this position, in the case of Ukraine and the situation that is now developing over there, I think China has very clearly stated its position, which of course emboldens Russia. And when we look at USA, we find that USA actually held the last card, and they could have prevented this from happening by simply assuring Russia that Ukraine will not be included in NATO, but they refused to do that, thereby almost forcing Russia to go ahead with what it actually planned for. And we see that now the European Union is in a flux as to how to go about handling this, because in fact they were also in a position to ask America to address Russian sensitivities, but probably the Russians were, the Americans were too headstrong about it, and they wanted to go ahead with it and extend NATO all the way till the Russian borders, and which of course is a very sensitive security concern of Russia.
All right. Farrukh, I'll ask the same question to you. Is Russia realigning its relationships or friendships with countries in the neighborhood?
I think at this moment what Russia is doing is actually finding its own feet. It used to be a superpower, and it has all the wherewithal to claim to be the same again. Remember their military capacity, their nuclear arsenal, their space program, their IT sector, everything is very strong once again. And they used to be at one point in time when they were USSR. And of course, in that they are reading the evolving international situation. For example, I know a lot of our Russian friends have a lot of concern about how India is aligning itself vis-a-vis Quad and AUKUS and all those, Indo-Pacific so-called, treaties or alliances. In that view, of course, they are going to explore new relations as well. But regarding China, AVM Sahab earlier said that China is actually emboldening what Russia is doing. I'm no spokesman. I don't have any. I don't hold any brief for any country. But I can say very clearly that China's reaction has been evolving. I think what happened in Ukraine wasn't to a satisfaction of any partner of Russia at this moment, because it is a very strange kind of situation that is going on, right? And secondly, regarding the intervention, he also pointed out that the West, or for that matter NATO or EU, could have actually taken care of the matter by ensuring that they were not going to include NATO into the alliance. There are two aspects here. One, if you look at the timeline of NATO inclusion, I don't think it was going to come very soon, right? Secondly, negotiating through threat of force becomes a problem, and it becomes a precedent. If that is going to be how you are going to actually conduct international foreign policy, that becomes a big problem for the existing status quo powers. In that situation, I think everyone is actually trying to understand what is going on, and nobody is very quick in actually emboldening or weakening anybody.
All right. I mean, two different points of views, but of course they converge on the same fact that this whole crisis in Ukraine, as has been pointed out by Pakistan, needs to be handled in a diplomatic fashion. And this is what our Prime Minister has also conveyed as far as Pakistan's perspective on Ukraine is concerned. Let's go to Afghanistan, AVM Sahab. Pakistan, of course, one of the major points that Pakistan did talk about with Vladimir Putin or with others was, of course, the current situation in Afghanistan and how both the countries, that is Russia and Pakistan, can deal with it. Afghanistan being in the two situations, the humanitarian crisis as well as the economic meltdown that Shamim Qureshi have also pointed out that it is going towards. How can converged interests of both Pakistan and Russia move to either delay or stop that?
Well, this is one area where interests of Pakistan and Russia do converge, because unstable Afghanistan is going to be a very serious concern, because it will revert back to the earlier times where there was elements within the country who could indulge into terrorism, not just within Afghanistan but in the bordering countries as well, and which is a serious concern not just for Pakistan but definitely for Russia as well. And this is one area where the two countries do get together. They have the same concern, and they would like the rest of the world also to ensure that the humanitarian situation does not aggravate in Afghanistan, and that the Afghanistan government settles down. It does get recognized, and so that it can become controllable and peaceful, and the terrorist elements like IS do not get a free hand. And in the case of Pakistan, it is the TTP, which is again a very serious concern of Pakistan. And we also learnt during the briefing that there is a meeting going to take place in Afghanistan and in China, where the immediate neighbors of Afghanistan are going to get together.
6 countries.
And in which, of course, Russia has also been invited.
Neighbor of Afghanistan.
Neighbors of Afghanistan. So I think this is an area where Pakistan and Russia share their concerns and their interests, and I think they are getting together in mutual consultations along with the rest of the countries is certainly going to help improve the situation in Afghanistan, and I'm sure both the countries are going to benefit as Afghanistan returns to normalcy. There is peace, there is the government, of course, is able to exercise its writ, and the terrorist elements are taken care of.
All right. Farrukh, now shared objectives that need to be promoted on a regional and international level. This is also something that has been pointed out by our Prime Minister and also by Shah Mahmood Qureshi Sahab in the press brief. Now, when we talk about this meeting of the Friends of Afghanistan, it's going to be held on the 30th and 31st of March in China, on which Russia has been invited, whether it be the Shanghai Cooperation Organization. How do you feel these and other organizations, of which Russia and Pakistan both are part, could move to A, converge the nations on a joint point of view on the issues that plague the region, and B, on also converging together as one important how should I say, countries or arena or bloc? I wouldn't call it bloc because it's something that our government and our Prime Minister does not
alignment?
want.
No, not even alignment. No.
All right.
Configuration,
convergence.
Not configuration, convergence of countries, right? A group of countries, neighbors particularly. Look, will you allow me to also comment on Afghanistan, because I think there are 5 points of convergences between Russia and Pakistan on Afghanistan. The first one, as was pointed out, is counter-terrorism. They have been fighting IMU, Islamic Movement of Uzbekistan, and then of course ETIM has become a factor also. It is a concern for China primarily, but also for all other countries. And then there is the issue of emerging ISKP, that is the Islamic State of Khorasan Province, the official name of the organization. That is a threat to all, Taliban, Russia and Pakistan, and the rest of the region as well. So, and of course, finally, TTP is also there, right? With all these concerns, one has to actually look at what is happening, and one has to work very closely to fight terrorism. The second convergence is about the connectivity in the region, and that connectivity essentially passes through Afghanistan.
All right, Farrukh, I'm really sorry I have to cut you short. We've got another guest. We are going to come back to the points of convergence as far as Afghanistan is concerned. Dr. Salma Malik, foreign affairs expert, joins us online. Dr. Saiba, thank you very much to have joined us. Dr. Saiba, when we talk of Pakistan, Russia, and of course this visit of Imran Khan Saab, now that he's back, and Shah Mahmood Qureshi Saab's press briefing as well, in which he talked in detail about the different points that were discussed during the different meetings in Russia by Prime Minister, by Shah Mahmood Qureshi Saab, by our Minister for Commerce as well. How do you view this visit as A, point of convergence of both countries, Pakistan and Russia, and B, also handling the current crisis that is engulfing of course the region, and that includes Afghanistan, A, and B, Ukraine?
Yeah, thank you so much, Umar. Without doubt, this was a very, very significant visit by the Prime Minister. As we know the timing and all, not only has it been significant in terms of the Prime Minister going there, it has also been significant in terms of the fact that it was a visit taking place after more than 2 decades of any of the head of the states, this way or that. And this was something which was long in offering, and we have been discussing these aspects far and wide. Now, of course, there are certain news that there haven't been significant MOUs signed or any of those agreements signed, but we must also keep in mind that this provides us with an open card as to what we would like to do in future. And most of the things that have been talked about between Pakistan and Russia have been done already in the background. What we now actually need to understand is how Pakistan and Russia I won't really use the term align, but cooperate on the international peace and stability forum, and how these new developments that are taking place, how do they benefit both the countries individually, bilaterally, as well as at the regional level, and how both these countries place themselves at the international level as an outcome of this particular meeting. So it has been significant in three, four levels, if we would like to term it that way. So there have been economic priorities and open-ended agendas being left so that a maximum number of beneficial aspects can be explored in time to come.
All right. Now, Dr. Saba, you were talking of MOUs and agreements that haven't come to light. Nevertheless, I would like to state here for the record that Pakistan and Russia are to boost cooperation in the civil and technology sector. There has been a letter of intent that has been signed between the Special Technology Zones Association official and the Russia's Skolkovo Foundation to boost Pakistan and Russian cooperation in civilian technology sector, foster strategic cooperation and exchange between Pakistan and Russian scientific and technological institutions. I just wanted to put that on the record. Now, coming back to the 3.5 hour long meeting between Vladimir Putin and Imran Khan Saab. Although there were important points that were discussed, there was also Pakistan's perspective on Ukraine that was, of course, highlighted during this important meeting. But also another issue that was discussed was Islamophobia and the energy cooperation. Now, when you look at the different facets of the current collaboration between Russia and Pakistan, what do you feel becomes the most important under the current situation?
Well, you see, these developments that have unfolded over the last 48 hours, for the moment, are hogging the entire international limelight, and everyone is focusing on what happens to Ukraine. And of course, God forbid, if there's a full-fledged war that unfolds, which seems to be unlikely. But in case if it does, that is going to channel a lot of international efforts, a lot of international economy, money, strategy, as well as geopolitics towards Russia. And one can always say that Ukraine is not Pakistan's next door neighbor, but having a larger significance in this region, whatever happens in Russia's near abroads, that were the term that we used for these states in yesteryears, it is going to have immense significance over what happens to any of the countries, including Pakistan. And for Pakistan, mainly the thrust of Pakistan Russia's relationship, as well as the different agreements that you have very amply pinpointed. And I said earlier on that even if someone thinks that something very enormous did not happen, many of the things that have happened were already in progress, were already in work when the Prime Minister went to Russia. So these things may unfortunately suffer a setback, and the Prime Minister was very much apprehensive of what might happen. And this was one of his statements, that we would like to see how best we can cooperate given the unfolding international environment. So it is going to have a direct indirect impact on Pakistan. Yet the fact is that in Afghanistan and so many other places, counterterrorism, having a stable and secure government in Afghanistan which does not have a destabilizing spillover effect for both Russia, as well as Central Asian states and Pakistan, is one of the biggest factors to which, of course, counterterrorism strategy
Of course, I
as
think
well
these are
as
very
economy
important
is
points that you have
linked.
highlighted, Dr. Saiba. And of course, we hope that, this collaboration or this cooperation that has been made evident by this visit of Prime Minister Imran Khan is going to further consolidate the mutual friendship and, of course, the relationship that both the countries enjoy and will continue to enjoy. Thank you very much, Dr. Salma Malik, to have joined us, and in the studio, thank you very much to both of my guests, AVM Ikramullah Bhatti Saab and Farrukh Pitafi. I'm really sorry, Farrukh, we couldn't continue on the points of convergence, but I'm sure we're going to continue that later. Time now, ladies and gentlemen, for the news. Fahim Bangash is here in the studios to give us the latest as far as Pakistan and the world is concerned, after which we will return with this transmission that will continue. Allah Hafiz for the moment.